Before you do,
Yeah. Okay, my friends, anything else anyone wants to run by us? Any spiritual experiences you have or questions before we move on to the class? Okay, let's move on to the class then. We're talking about the seven angels pouring out the seven vials of the last plagues, so to speak. And the interpretation we're given here is quite a bit different than the Orthodox interpretation is, boy, we're going to have these terrible plagues um, that uh, are going to thwart mankind, and the vials will be poured out upon the sea, and all the life in the seas will die. It says, and fortunately, this is symbolic. This it won't take place literally as it's spoken of here, but the core meaning is a lot different than
They just hate when you
the literal interpretation. Did somebody say something? Oh, okay. So anyway, what these are seven. It represents seven labors that the disciple, once he reaches a degree of enlightenment where he performs a work uh, promoted by the Christ within, when he begins to do these works, then what he becomes is a plague to those who worship the world, so to speak. And the dragon is representative of the powers that rule the world, what we call the powers that be. And the beast is that which represents those powers. And the mark of the beast are those who are the mark of the beast are those that put their trust in those that go by authority that is not the authority approved by the God within. When we put our trust on the gods without, and this can be done by an atheist, by a believer, by anyone, they put their trust on what authorities outwardly will say. And when the servants then, when they speak the words of Christ, in other words, the words that come are proved to be true from your inner self, it runs completely contrary to those who have the mark of the beast. In other words, runs completely contrary to those who are governed by outward authorities. If you speak any words that go contrary to outward authorities, you will be attacked. And this happens in all the traditions, from science, religion, education, whatever. Let's just take something fairly um, that we can talk about that isn't too controversial, like the Big Bang Theory. Before the James Webb telescope made some discoveries, anyone that doubted the Big Bang Theory in any degree, because it was establishment theory. Establishment all agreed that, boy, all the details, all the facts lead up to this conclusion. The universe started 13.8 billion years ago, and then uh, now I personally checked out opinions of different scientists on this, and one thing I found out was that anyone that disagreed with this or said anything to the contrary didn't get any funding. They were disowned by other scientists. They lost their reputations. And one guy named that was kind of promoted the idea that no, the universe is really older than that. He was really ostracized. His name was Eric Lerner. And then, and he made he made a number of predictions that the James Webb Telescope verified. And then when the James Webb Telescope indicated that, the universe could be older than 13.8 billion years, this figure may actually be wrong. And then all of a sudden, Eric Lerner begins to look like, well, this guy might be a genius because he figured out stuff that the other scientists didn't, but he was really attacked for it. And he's still attacked in a lot of circles, but not as much as he used to be. That's just one example. But when the disciple goes against the authorities of the world, he is attacked. And then we come down here, we've covered the three first angels, and now we're on the fourth angel. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which hath power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. Now, in the book of Isaiah, it predicts a time when the sun will increase in its radiance and heat 7 times, it says. Well, and I think this scripture is kind of linked to that. What's interesting, it says the moon will also be much brighter, and which indicates that the moon reflects the light of the sun. And a lot of scientists say the Bible indicates the moon has its own light. So if the sun is brighter and the moon would also be brighter, that would indicate the moon reflects the light of the sun, which is pretty good for the Bible to be make that connection. Anyway, the sun couldn't really, if the sun were 7 times its heat, it would destroy all life on Earth in about 1 day. So that's not likely to be something that will literally come true. In all the thousands of stars they examine, there's no sun in our category of suns that has any type of brightening like that ever happened out of the thousands and millions of different stars that they've looked at. Now, some of the younger suns, like Betelgeuse, which is nearing the time when it will go nova, it does increase in brightness some, but that's because it's a younger, larger, unstable star. Ours is a very stable star. So this has to be figurative. Now, you talk to the fundamentalist religious people, they don't look at it that way. They think everything's going to be literal. Now, so what's the real meaning here? The sun is symbol of what?
The spirit, your higher
Spirit.
self.
Higher self or soul?
Soul.
All right, the soul, the higher self or soul. Okay. So the fourth angel, now this is talking about the fourth service rendered. Pours his vial. The vial is symbolic of the passion of God, and or the passion of the disciple. So the passion, the disciple has passion from his own soul, that he gets revelation, and he pours this out or spreads it out to mankind. And when mankind, as I said earlier, when those who rely on outer authority get a message from the inner authority that contradicts what they believe, then they are as if they are scorched with fire, especially when they can't refute it. When the message of truth comes and they are and they are confronted by the disciple, and the disciple's reasoning is higher than their reasoning, then they are as if they are scorched with fire. What do you think about that, Curtis? You think when you have you seen times when you presented a message to people that are into accepting outer authorities, and they become very disturbed by that message?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll tell you what I did. I wrote this book that has 50 articles in it, and they start off really easy to accept and absorb. Like life takes sand, you got to deal with blow by blow, whatever comes your way, you got to rise above it. And then one is putting a positive spin and on your words and your actions. And people read the first 12 and they think, yeah, this is really good. I can go along with this. And then I take them into karma and standing up for your life, where I introduce reincarnation, but I don't use reincarnation, the word. I teach the principle without using the word. So they're already into it about halfway, and they're thinking this has got some really good stuff in it. Well, this must make sense too. I never thought of it this way. Every time I tried to, like when my sister and I would go talk to the missionaries over in Salt Lake or Provo, we'd walk up to a crowd of them and say, "Hey, did you guys know that Joseph Smith believed in and taught reincarnation?" Boy, they would just come unglued. They just didn't know what to say. They thought we were of the devil.
Yeah, especially when you present them with evidence.
Gave him, yeah, he taught.
Then they really get angry. Then the words that they're scorched with fire just kind of is very descriptive of their the way that they respond, isn't it?
They wanted to hit us. We'd show them where he taught Eliza R. Snow, and she used the actual R word, and we'd show it to them. Well, let me show you something here that you might have overlooked. And they would just like you put fire on them.
Yeah. So, and then men were scorched with great heat and blasphemed the name of God, which had power over these plagues. Now, where do we find the name of God?
Oh, within,
Yeah, it says within the forehead.
right here.
Yeah. So, and that's where where the disciple also thinks you get messages from the soul, symbolic of the sun, and they blaspheme that, which means that they will attack and belittle and make fun of and try to dismiss the message from the disciple because it goes against the consensus thought of the authorities of the world, or the authorities of a religion, or the authorities of a group, and or even how some people may interpret the Bible or their own scriptures or their own guru. And so they will take that message and they will totally belittle it as if it is totally ridiculous. And this is blaspheming that which came from the God presence in the forehead and radiating out to the world. And then it comes back with these attacks. And they repented not to give God glory. To repent means to change their minds. They refuse to change their minds. They refuse to accept the message. And we can see this with all the great teachers of the past. It's harder to see it with those in the present, because those in the present that are confronting the authorities of the world are often seen as enemies of the state. And so they're very controversial. But we can look back in history at the ones that aren't controversial anymore, like Galileo. Galileo was very controversial. All the Vatican scientists were against him. They belittled him. They tried to they threatened him with persecution, death, imprisonment if he did not recant uh, everything he saw with his own eyes through his telescope. So his revelations were like fire that caused these people to be burned and scorched, and so they rebelled, and then they blasphemed by attacking that which was actually visible through a telescope and could be proven, ironclad proof. He had ironclad proof he was right, but they blasphemed the name of God, which represents truth, and they did not change their minds to give glory to Galileo or to the revelation that was right there before them. But it eventually prevailed. People heard about it. Other people built their own telescopes and took a look and found out Galileo was right. And so eventually the truth got out there. But before the truth gets a foothold, there's a tremendous reaction from those that refuse to recognize the truths that come from within, from people's own soul, and that's verified through the soul.
Along those lines, a person that was a master at hiding high spiritual truths in his work was Shakespeare. He taught karma, reincarnation, power of the soul. He taught evolution. He taught everything that the people would have rebelled against if he had just taught it. But he put it in plays. He concealed a lot of mystical truths in his plays that people today are just beginning to unravel.
Yeah, and a lot of the fairy tales from the Middle Ages and nursery rhymes were teaching truths that were masked, that the general public could understand, but went over the authorities' heads. They just thought they were little things for kids, but they were the disciples of that age knew that if they taught openly, they'd probably be put to death. So they created these nursery rhymes, and like Humpty Dumpty and different things like that, and they all had very deep meanings that were very critical of the king or the powers that be, but the powers that be couldn't really go after them because they weren't sure. So that's kind of interesting too. So it's similar type of deal.
Francis Bacon wrote Shakespeare, and he also wrote under the names of some of his contemporaries. But he said if he would have said openly what he said in plays, he would have been hung.
Yeah, that's what I just said. You're right on, Ed. Yeah, Ed likes to quote the Shakespeare statement, all the world's a stage and we all play many different parts.
Yeah.
Ed.
Well, we're fortunate to live in an age where we can speak our minds pretty much. Well, like during the pandemic, if you spoke about against the vaccines, sometimes you'd lose your job and stuff. They do still come down on you, don't allow you to speak about certain things, but we're able to speak more openly now than like during the Middle Ages. You had to be really careful what you said. Now, Isaac Newton, the great scientist, he spent a third of his time on deciphering the scriptures, and he kept it hidden because his views, he felt he would be maybe put to death if they knew what he really thought about the Trinity and the scriptures. So his views on interpretation of the scriptures was not even available till I think somebody discovered a trunk with his papers in about it in the 1940s. And so now we know what Isaac Newton thought of. He spent a lot of time trying to figure out the book of Revelation that we're talking about and the book of Daniel. Spent a tremendous effort on that. Somebody have some?
Yeah, I had something. I think now we may have an opposite problem that many theories that that are giving warped proofs as if it's true, as if it's truth, but it's warped and it is the reverse, like the flat earthers and all these crazy other theories. So there are some theories that go against the authorities, but they are also against common sense. They are warping it.
Yeah, I think there's some of these crazy theories are put out there, and then there's rational theories. So some people just buy into everything. If it's a conspiracy theory, then they accept it. Others are more discriminating. Well, it's a conspiracy theory, but does it have any basis? You know, that's what you want to ask. And does it register with your soul as being
Logic.
possible? Yeah, and a lot of what they considered conspiracy 5 years ago is now turning into to fact. So we're not all conspiracies are just made up, but there, for instance, yeah, I think there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, but a lot of the other conspiracies, you know, I have a lot of doubts about, but there are some conspiracies that definitely happen, and most of the true conspiracies are just centered around a very small handful of people. Because, like, if there's a conspiracy, some people believe the moon landing was a big conspiracy, but if it was, it would have to involve thousands of people. And you can't have a conspiracy where 1,000 people know about it. It has to be to be a successful conspiracy, it has to be planned by a small number of people, and if anyone breaks the mold, they can be killed. So it has to be very tight. And so
well, the Twin Towers was a conspiracy too. George Bush did it.
yeah, that's what people think. Though that's another one that thousands of people would have had to been in on.
I got a question for you. Lincoln and Kennedy had a lot in common, and they were both going to stop borrowing money from the Federal Reserve, the bankers.
Yeah.
They were going to just issue money and not pay anybody to do it and not have any high interest. So there's a conspiracy theory which I think has a lot of merit that they were killed by the big money institutions because they were going to do away with borrowing at high rates of interest from the Federal Reserve.
Well, Abraham Lincoln already did it. He created the greenback. When the war started, he went to the bankers and they wanted to charge him a real high rate of interest. And he said, I can't fight a war paying this interest. So he read over the Constitution again and figured out he had constitutional authority to print his own money.
Right. He had power to print his own money.
So he printed the greenback, and that really upset the bankers. And after he was killed, they did away with the greenback right away, you know.
So
see, right now we bought the Federal Reserve, which is a private industry, a combination of bankers. They print up the money for us or issue the money, and then they charge us interest on it.
It's called prime rate.
Right now, we're paying $1 trillion a year interest to the bankers and people we borrowed money from. Okay, $1 trillion. That's enough to end all poverty in America if we had that money available. But Lincoln saw this problem, so he printed up his own money, and it had no interest. He could print up all he wanted and not pay any interest on it. Okay,
right.
And
he was going to do the same thing.
then Kennedy was aware of this, and he wanted to do the same thing.
Right.
And that idea was completely trashed right after he was killed. But then, yeah, Kennedy had a lot of things though that disturbed the powers that be. He didn't want to expand the war in Vietnam, and there was big money interests that would make a lot of money off of the war that wanted to
There's
expand
big
the war.
money in war.
Yeah, there's big money in war. Have the same problem with Ukraine. There's big money there, and nobody knows where all that money we're giving Ukraine goes. There's no auditing of it. And
Kennedy wanted to make an agreement with Russia to get rid of all of our nukes. And he wanted to also release everything about the UFOs, but that's what there's people who say that that's the CIA had him killed because they didn't want to get rid of all of our atomic bombs and everything.
yeah, Kennedy had a lot of good ideas, and it was amazing. But they had about a dozen reasons to get rid of him, and which one was the main, I don't know. But switching over to interest-free money, that would have been enough to do it. And a lot of conspiracy people think that's why they were both killed, Lincoln and Kennedy.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
That's just me. But yeah, big money, that's your big motivator right there. They determine the prime rate, which is what, 4 point some %? I don't know what it is, but that's determined by the banking system, and they pocket all that money.
Yeah, right. The end of Jimmy Carter's run, it was up to 20%. Yeah, it was amazing.
Prime rate was up at 20%.
Yeah, yeah, just before Reagan came in. But it was horrible. I mean, horrible time to be in real estate. Which
I remember I was in real estate and we were selling, I sold a couple houses, 10%, 10% to
yeah,
buy.
back then 8 to 10% was good.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Okay, and the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain. And they blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and they repented not of their deeds. Okay, what do you think the seat of the beast is? They poured their vial upon the seat of the beast. The seat is what gives the beast power. What would that be?
Political. Political, where they reign from the seat.
Yeah, it's that power of the what the Book of Revelation calls the red dragon, which is that power which gives an illusion, supports an illusion of authority that runs contrary to that which is verified by the God within, by your own souls. Okay, so he pours out his vial upon the seat of the beast. So, in other words, what this means is the disciple, he pours out his truth and aims it right at the core of the illusion that is supporting the powers that be. Now, let's go back to your example of reincarnation and Mormonism. Okay, you got a witness from within that reincarnation is true, so you go and tell a bunch of Mormons about it. Okay, that was like pouring out your vial, your passion, because you were passionate about it, so you pour out your message to different Mormons, and right upon the illusion that there is just one life and that's all there is. Okay, and you poured out your vial upon the seat of the beast, and what happened is the kingdom was full of darkness. So let's just take that one example. The disciple goes to the various churches that believe there's just one life and that's it. And he proves from the scriptures, he proves from scientific evidence, and maybe his own personal testimony that reincarnation is a true principle, and they just totally reject it. And when a message that's verified by the soul is rejected, then the soul within the person becomes eclipsed. So the kingdom of God within them is full of darkness. And they nod their tongues for pain. And this is symbolic of what happens when people are presented with a truth, with evidence of a truth, and then they reject it as if they gnaw their tongues. They can't even speak against it. They can't come up with any evidence. They can't refute your presentation, and so it's like they're tongue-tied, so to speak.
You take it to its logical conclusion. Well, how do you think the plan of salvation works without reincarnation? They don't know. When are you going to get resurrected? When are you going to get another body? Where are you going to live when you have another body? What's it going to look like? You take all these arguments to their logical conclusion and they get tongue-tied. They
Yeah,
don't know what to say.
yeah, they it's like they gnaw their tongues for pain is a really interesting description of it.
There it is.
It's out it all, yeah, they're almost pained when you present a truth to a person that does not want the truth. It's painful for them, and that's why they attack. That's why they become angry. That's why they belittle you and try to make fun of you. They can't come up with any reasonable argument. So they but they are, it puts them in a state of mind that is painful to them when the light of the soul radiates on their kingdom, which is darkness. And so it's a pretty interesting thing. The We'll end with just reading the next step up. The sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, and the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. That's got a pretty interesting interpretation. We'll talk about that next week. Any comments or questions before we end the class here?
I just can't believe these people aren't more appreciative when we prove to them how wrong they've been.
Yeah. But, every once in a while you find somebody that listens to their own souls, and they really appreciate it when they discover truth. But if they're not ready, and you present a truth to a person that is just fixed on a dogma, on a book, on a literal interpretation, then, well, even this interpretation we're giving of Revelation, the regular interpretation is this is all going to literally happen. The sun is going to heat up, and men are actually going to be scorched by a really hot sun, 7 times hotter than it is now, according to Isaiah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you somebody that just shifted on a dime was my sister Susan. When I introduced reincarnation to her, the light just went on, and it just made perfect sense to her, and she became an ally from that moment on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does happen.
It does. It's happened to a number of people in this group right here. Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
Asaf happened to Asaf.
No, I wasn't religious at all. I was secular, atheist.
Yeah, that was probably an advantage for him.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's